Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or it's time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guest today is a theater actor who has performed at notable regional theaters including The Taper, Disney Concert Hall, Pasadena Playhouse, and The Wallace. She's traveled internationally with the Actors Gang and performed 6 seasons with Santa Cruz Shakespeare. She will be performing there again this summer with her husband Dan Donahue as a titular couple in Macbeth. She is the recipient of LA Drama Critics Circle Award winner for lead performance. Her TV credits include Shameless, American Woman, Corporate, and Days of Our Lives. Paige Linsdey White, welcome to Hindsighting.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Today we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 1987, The Last Emperor. From 9 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Editing, Best Sound, and Best Score. It was nominated against Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Hope and Glory, and Moonstruck. So, Paige, I think the 80s is sort of an underrated decade for movies. I think so much incredible stuff was going on, and I think when it's talked about, it's a little bit dismissed. It's dismissed as just like fun, sort of like tentpole, you know, like, oh, the 80s were fun, and like the movies were cheesy fun. And I think people... I think the crux of it is that it comes in between the 70s, which is so storied, you know, which is such an incredible decade, and the 90s, which is so incredible. And I think the 80s, by default, is a little bit just dismissed. Again, even by people who like some of these movies. And I wanted to make the second season of Hindsighting about the 80s because that's always kind of struck me as unfair. And I think what I like about the 80s, looking at it as an adult, is that so many great things are going on. You have, in my opinion, comedies are never better than they are now. And action movies are never better. Action adventure movies are never better than they are now. And grown-up dramas, you know, dramas for adults are never better than they are now. And horror is really strong. And what's crazy is that for the most part, all these things are made by major studios. You know?
Yeah.
And major studios are putting these things out. And you know, we still have franchises and these things that we have now. Those have never gone away. And of course, there's always bad movies. But I just think that this decade is sort of unsung. So what do you think about when you think about the 80s in movies?
That's so interesting. I had never thought about the 80s as being an unsung decade. And maybe it's because being egocentric and having grown up in the 80s, that it were my formative years of media, and just it was all consuming, and thinking of E.T. and Splash, the Goonies, and all these just wonder. Was the Last Unicorn, was that 70s or 80s? I think it's right there on the cusp of it.
The Last Unicorn? I don't think I even knew that movie.
It's an animated movie with Mia Farrow is one of the voices. It's very trippy.
I think I know it. I'm not sure. It might be the 80s. Yeah, it might be. I'm not positive.
Yeah, and there was some. Also, I grew up in a military household, and I wasn't allowed to watch a lot growing up. Mostly, it was very censored, and so a lot of the child-oriented movies were fantastic. That's what I got to see. But then revisiting movies, coming back, I didn't see Breakfast Club until I was in college.
Yeah,
you know, and so being able to go back and see John Hughes movies and having to sneak like some movies, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I just think there's some fantastic storytelling.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because I think you weren't allowed to see stuff. My parents, or at least my father, was more permissive, or at least didn't keep his eye on the ball. I mean, I may have talked about this on this podcast, but maybe it's worth repeating in case this is someone's first episode. You know, in case like the Bertolucci fans is, you know, that's our way into hindsighting. But my father picked out movies to see based on what time they were starting, meaning like how soon they were starting. And I grew up seeing just a crazy, random potpourri of movies that you wouldn't take a child to. Some stuff I did see the kids movies that you referenced. Those were easy. Those were like, but I remember this is a strange one. Well, I've talked about this. My first R-rated movie I saw when I was 5 years old. It was the movie Blue Thunder. I don't know if you know that movie.
No.
As it's actually a pretty good movie. It's with Roy Scheider, and it's like about a police helicopter. Most of the violence is like helicopters blowing up. There's no like, there's really no sex in it. There is a naked woman contortionist scene that I just was confused by. I just didn't understand what I was looking at. So the fact that this woman was naked was like secondary. I was like, oh, I guess she's naked, but that's like not my first question.
And she's contorted.
She's contorted. It's literally a woman who could like a human pretzel, like a woman who can do that. I mean, they clearly hired someone who could do that. But anyway, so I saw just a random. Like I remember my dad took me to see A Chorus Line, the movie, which was just which again I think might have been PG-13, but I just remember seeing that movie, and then I was in that play in high school almost 10 years later, and I was like, oh, I know this. Like
I know, it's somewhere in there. Gosh, I didn't see The Chorus Line. I've never seen the movie. I've only seen the play.
Right.
And I didn't see that till about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So like you, it was my introduction to all media, like, because it was contemporary. So that's why there's a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in this for people of our generation. Formative years. And what's interesting is that like there's obviously a ton of 80s nostalgia going on now. I mean, Stranger Things being maybe the most prime example. I know Stranger Things just ended a couple months ago, but that really is, is really packaging this idea of like 80s suburbia, and obviously it wasn't only people our generation who watched it, or it wouldn't have been so big a hit. So nostalgia in the 80s is definitely inextricably linked right now. All right, well, let's move on to the Last Emperor, but first some trivia and some stats. So 19,000 extras were needed over the course of this film.
I read that. It's astonishing. It's an astonishing feat of filmmaking and wrangling.
Yes. And you certainly can see it on the screen. This is the sort of what I talked about a second ago. This is the first PG-13 movie to win Best Picture. We're only 3 years into PG-13. And I guess the previous, PG-13 is only from 1984. And this is 1987. So this is the first one.
I'm so surprised that it was PG-13.
Yeah. You thought it was R because of the wet nurse? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a case for that. I mean, there is. We see a exposed female breast a lot in this movie. This matched Gigi's accomplishment of winning all 9 of the categories in which it was nominated, which in both cases did not include any nominations in the acting categories. This record, both in terms of numbers and percentage, is only surpassed by Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, which we covered last season, which won all 11 categories in which it was nominated, but again, had no acting nominations. So this goes 9 for 9 and won everything it was nominated for, which is insane.
It's so interesting to me in the respect of being an actor. I love watching. That's my go-to part of the movie, right? Where it's and
we're going to get into that. Yeah.
Most.
Yeah. No, I definitely want to talk to you about the acting in general. Last thing is 2 more things rather. At 2 hours and 43 minutes, it is number 78 in ascending length of Best Pictures, number 79 if you count Sunrise, which we'll litigate if that counts in another episode. It is number 58 on the box office list of Best Pictures with a worldwide gross of $44 million. So let's talk about it. You, like me, had never seen this movie. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
watching it, I remember I'd seen parts of it, but I had never seen the whole thing.
Right. I remember vaguely this movie being out and this movie being a big deal, but it was not something my dad dragged me to. It's probably something my parents saw because they had been to China, or maybe they either had been to China or they were going to go to China. I can't remember the timeline, but I just remember this movie being like a big awards movie, like a big sort of, I wasn't thinking of it in those terms. I was definitely thinking, oh, this is a big like prestige movie. So yeah, I knew very little about it. I've seen some Bertolucci movies, and I've seen the two main actors in this, John Lone and Joan Chen, who we're going to talk about in other things. Peter O'Toole, of course, but I went into this pretty cold, not knowing much about it. So,
me too.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. I'll just kind of start here. Structurally, this movie reminded me of another Best Picture winner that we've covered on this show that comes after. And I'm curious if you, either when you were watching it or now that I'm bringing it up, or if you agree, this reminded me a little bit of Slumdog Millionaire. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I never saw it.
Oh, it's okay.
I haven't seen it.
It's okay. Well, that's fine. I only bring it up for this one reason, is that in Slumdog Millionaire, it's non-linear. Like, we're meeting a character and then we're flashing back to how did this character get to this place. But the way they do it in this is similar. That's the only comparison that I'm making. I'm not even, there's a lot of movies that do this.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that we're starting with who is this guy? And then we flash back and see that, oh, this guy was literally an emperor. Like, I think he starts at
a very sympathetic place.
Yes.
Right. And that's where we will connect to him. And he has such a peaceful and demeanor of his circumstances in prison. And then I think it's a really smart choice.
Yeah.
Because he's unsympathetic later, and he's more unsympathetic in real life.
I definitely want to hear about that too. I don't know a lot about, I definitely don't know a lot about the history of this and how accurate or not. You want to talk about it now, or you took us there? Let's go there.
Sure. Yeah. Because the movie, it's so beautiful and so well done, and it takes us into a world that I don't know a lot about, and especially it's a forbidden city, right? So
literally.
Was this encapsulated, preserved tradition that was taking place there during the regime change. Something about the movie that, I mean, it's so beautiful, and I was allowed into the Forbidden City for the first time.
Yeah.
And so taking us into this tradition and culture, it's mesmerizing. However, because I don't know a lot about that culture, I got lost. As the government's changed and the history progressed, I don't know a lot about that. So it made me research more. And apparently this emperor, because I think he was crowned when he was 3.
Yeah, he's
really just about to be 3.
He's really little, yeah.
He's a tiny child, and then given unlimited power. Basically, he's told he can do anything except leave the city. Mm-hmm. So he's unlimited power in his prison. And he's surrounded by eunuchs and servants, and apparently the real emperor was so abusive with the people around him that just for trivial misconduct that he would beat people one time to death.
Oh my God.
And stuff like that wasn't included in the movie, trying to make him more sympathetic. And I think that's a flaw.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, and I didn't say this in my intro, but a lot of the best, I entered into season 2 with these 10 Best Picture winners. And a lot of the nominees too, because I'm watching a lot of the nominees as well, that my idea of the 80s is that a lot of these Best Picture winners don't reflect all the things that we liked about the 80s, is that they're very stiff and dry, and with exceptions. And there's something about this movie. My push-pull with this movie was I found it formally incredibly beautiful. I thought visually, Vittorio Storaro wins his 3rd Oscar in just under 10 years. He shot a lot of movies for Bertolucci, but he won an Oscar for Apocalypse Now, and he won an Oscar for Reds, and then he won an Oscar for this, and that's in just under 10 years. And wow. I think that visually, not just the way it's shot, but the way things are staged, like this movie is epic. And I found that, and I kind of knew, that's kind of all I knew about it going in. I was like, oh, this movie's definitely epic.
Epic. The framework, right?
Yeah, perfect framework. And the fact that Peter O'Toole showing up in it,
come on,
just reminds you of Lawrence of Arabia, which won the Oscar 25 years earlier and is arguably the most epic movie ever. I'm not saying it's the best one ever, but in terms of when you think about a big shit Oscar epic, Lawrence of Arabia is
extras.
Yeah, extras. Just the fucking scale of something. It's no doubt an influence on this. We talked a few episodes ago about Gandhi, and obviously the huge influence that Lawrence has over Gandhi, just David Lean in general, but certainly Lawrence. So, but yeah, my push-pull with this movie is I found a lot of it, or most of it, very hollow. I found something about it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So when you were talking about all of the Academy Awards that it won, right? And that exemplifies the skill of the filmmaking, that the best cinematography and the best director and that within the framework, but ultimately when the acting comes in, when it's missing that's like, I never connected to Lord of the Rings, right?
Me neither.
But I of course I wasn't a reader of the books either, but there was something it just seemed very composed, but I didn't grab into that world. And there's something about, even when this movie started, and maybe it's because it's done in English, that initially for the backstory of a lot of the actors, that there seems to be a lot of dubbing.
Oh my God. I had this all over my notes. Yeah, we'll keep going, but I'm totally on your page with this.
Which disconnects from what the true emotion of the instrument of the actor is doing. Yeah. So we're coming into a world that I don't know personally, but I hope to get it from the people that are there to communicate. And when it's disconnected with a layer of dubbing or people that are acting not in their language, right? Then it's like, why not? Why isn't it subtitled?
Yeah, I think good. Yeah. No, well, I think it's interesting because I wondered. I had a similar thought that if this movie were to be in its native language, I understand why in 1987 that just wasn't a possibility. I understand that like this was made with a Western audience in mind, even though it was going to be released globally. I'm not saying it was done for any mercenary reason. I just trying to. I'll cut them some slack. At that time, there was no way a Western audience was going to embrace a movie like this if it weren't in English. So
yeah, we're not going to read for 3 hours.
Exactly. So whereas now with an international academy and a movie like Parasite winning Best Picture,
yes,
which is a much different movie. I'm just saying foreign language. I'm not even conflating Asia. I'm just saying I'm just saying a foreign language movie winning both foreign language film and Best Picture, which had never happened before. And obviously we're going to cover Parasite on the show at some point because it won Best Picture. I think now you could do this movie in its native language because a lot of people that I know will watch things on Netflix, and will watch them they watch subtitles anyway. People who are not even hard of hearing, they just like to watch subtitles. My wife sometimes watches subtitles on, and there's nothing wrong with her hearing because she just wants to make sure she doesn't miss a word. I've done that occasionally. So I think this is one of those ways where streaming is a positive thing because I think people are used to reading. And if you go on like Instagram, so everyone's reels are captioned.
Yeah,
I guess so you could watch it and either have the sound really low or have like the sound like off if you're like in like a public place. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you that, well, I'm talking to an actor, so let's talk about acting. I think that I noticed the dubbing also, and it really took me out of it. And I think it's a combination, I'm just going to echo what you said because I think it's brilliant, is that it's a combination of dubbing and either actors performing in a second or third language, or
which is commendable. Like that is absolutely an astounding feat. There's still
a layer of remove because your brain is thinking about your non-native tongue. Another thing it could be, and I don't know this to be true, is, and we're seeing this a lot today, is they could be non-professional actors. It's possible with this movie. Not like it's a Safdie Brothers thing where it's possible that they had to use people who were these people to play these parts. I don't know that to be true, but I think it's a combination of those three things, or a potential combination of those three things.
But once you get into the professional actors, and the lead, John
Lone, he's great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And the simplicity with which he works. It's just, you can watch him thinking in a scene, and that's all you need to do. And he's remarkable. But then there's some people come in that it's so funny to me, the scope of the filmmaking. And then you have an actor come in and do so much backstory or exposition. The pilot woman who comes in.
I have a lot of questions about her. She's Japanese. She's in like Red a lot.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. You took us there. She comes into the movie. So this is when they're basically in the Japanese embassy. They're sort of living in the Japanese embassy. I forget what country they're in, but they're basically getting asylum from the Japanese. And this woman kind of just waltzes into the movie, and she's in like red head to toe. It looks like she's almost looks like a superhero. It's interesting costuming. I thought she was interesting, but I was also kind of like, what movie is she in? Where did she come from? What did we miss? Because it's just like, she's like, I'm a spy. I don't know, who cares? I'm like,
it was so jarring to me. It's in the moment that his wife consort decides to leave him, finally leaves him. She just walks out into the street into the rain, right? And so this other woman waltzes in, and she's facilitating so many parts of the movie, whether she's coming in, she immediately says that she's a spy. Also, she'll be his consort, which he doesn't want. That's another side story, that apparently this emperor was not interested in women at all. And so finding that out, and the way that they sexualized the wives, is another issue that I have with this movie. But yeah, so she comes in, and then immediately it brings in that she's a spy. Also, she's bringing in opium. She's facilitating all of these different roles in basically 2 minutes of this 3-hour movie.
Yeah, I wrote down, this Japanese pilot lady needs her own movie. And I mean that in a good way and a bad way, because she does bring a little bit of life to the movie. Yeah. And I think the actor is good. It's not really a performance. It's real. Well, you don't think so?
She wasn't my favorite.
Okay.
I thought she was a little much. I felt like she was kind of like, in a completely different world coming in, and she's like, "Hi, I am all this."
Yeah.
And it sounded a little Katharine Hepburn of I don't know.
Which might have been a direction she was given. Yeah, it's interesting.
Sure.
There's one guy, he's in maybe one scene, and since we're talking about the acting, I think it's when they transition, when John Lone is like standing by the piano and he's singing, he's like, he's very dapper. So there's an American.
That took me out too. Yeah. What was with that dubbing? Why did they do that? That singing was like, I became a playboy. Then all of a sudden he's like the best singer in the world.
Oh yeah, he probably couldn't sing. I would imagine that John Lone probably just couldn't sing well enough or they got in the edit room and were like, we can beef this up. But anyway, there's an American who asks either Joan Chen or the consort to dance.
Yeah.
And he's either very poorly dubbed or just a terrible actor. He's like, I'm an American. What are you doing here? It sounded like somebody, I don't know, like English or Swedish or something, who was like doing an American accent. It was just, did you bump on that? I wrote down like, American is a bad actor. It's the only American we see in this whole movie.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even clock that. He didn't take me out as much as just thinking about his line where he says some men get all the luck when talking about the emperor having 2 beautiful wives. Mm-hmm. And I think that played into the basic, I don't know, eroticizing these women. I mean, they're very beautiful women.
Yeah.
The king had the emperor had no interest in them.
Was he gay or asexual, or we don't know?
We don't know. I mean, there is suspicion that he was probably or maybe homosexual, but that he didn't show interest in women.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this. We talked about this even in the Gandhi episode. just going like another historical biopic that's very epic and won a shit ton of Oscars. Mm-hmm. Every biopic, even the truly great ones, there's always that creative license. I think, again, not to make excuses for this movie, I think, again, they had to zhuzh this up, and having him with these two beautiful women, I think, was a way for like a Western, or at least this is what they thought. Again, I think today, if what you're saying is true, these women wouldn't be in it, or they wouldn't have this role. I think he would be gay. Maybe he'd have two men with him. I don't know. And I think in 1987, there was he
was married, and so he was forced.
Of course, his arranged marriage. Of course.
And he had these two wives. And
yeah. And it's interesting because there's so many times this movie flirts with something really interesting like that. Because when that part of the movie is really interesting, because to your point, I do think this movie's strongest when we get John Lone, who's luckily in the movie from whatever point it is. And they're cycling through these kid actors, and you see him become 4, 7, 8, whatever it is. And then he becomes John Lone. And I think he's a terrific actor. And I think Joan Chen is very good too. I don't know the woman who plays the consort, but I thought that was an interesting dynamic. And then this other woman leaves, understandably, because she doesn't want to be a consort. And that's all makes dramatic sense, but it's just like, well, this is the part of the movie that sort of was the most relatable because it was about a relationship. It was about people. And I think that, I guess my big problem with this movie, and I had this suspicion going in, not that I didn't go in with an open mind and heart, because I really...
Yeah, and it's when you get into a 3-hour Academy Award winning one, you're like, this is cinema homework. Where
it can be.
Okay. It can be. But what I am a sucker for exposition. So any the backstory when things are going good, when you hear the past that was just so the nostalgic or beautiful, those are my favorite parts of movies. When it gets when it has him in the Forbidden City, I love that, even though it was extensive and it was long. I love learning about that kind of thing. But parts of this were just like this answer was a little bit rambling.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Forbidden City, because it's such a huge character in this movie, because they were allowed, this is the real place, is my understanding, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't build this. They were allowed inside. And
yeah, it has 9,999 rooms because only heaven has 10,000.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah, that's what I read about that. It's beautiful. It's the first time anybody was allowed to film it.
Right. And this is obviously an Italian director and a British production. This is essentially a British production. Jeremy Thomas, who won the Best Picture Oscar, is a British producer. But obviously it's an Italian director and an Italian screenwriter and so on and so forth. So it's a very international crew, not having looked at all the nationalities of everybody in the end credits. But yeah, the Forbidden City, it's really beautiful. And what I think works best about this movie, and the movie does make this point, is that it's beautiful, but it's a prison. And he starts to see it as a prison, and he's an emperor, but only inside these four walls. And the movie does, to its credit, make this point that this guy goes from being... This guy's always in prison the whole movie, except for maybe when he's in the embassy, this part that we seem to, that sort of stands out, that when he's in but even the Japanese embassy is a prison because he can't leave it, or it's not safe for him to live it. So it's not safe for him to leave it. So this is a character who's imprisoned the entire movie, basically until the end. And it's just an incredible location. I mean, one of the images, and it's probably the GIF I'm going to use when I post about this episode when it airs, is the shot of the little boy running up with sort of the billowing curtain. I remember seeing that as a kid on the TV ads for this. It's always, that's the most beautiful image in this movie, or one of many, actually. I'm going to talk a lot about just some beautiful cinematography in this movie. But the Forbidden City it's just an incredible location. I mean, you're looking at that, you're like, okay, I have never seen this before. And
it's so detailed and so intricate. It's like no set could ever been, built or to show that.
Yeah.
Just the detail, the complexity of it.
They probably just wouldn't have made the movie if they couldn't have gone inside it. Because even if you got an incredible production designer to rebuild that, I think the verisimilitude of being in that place just adds so much production value. I'm sure it just lifted the whole thing. Just to, so. But I'm not saying I want the whole movie to take place there, but yeah, the Forbidden City is cool, is what I'm talking. Or is really interesting.
Yes,
and I definitely think that was, I think just in general, I've sort of talked about it a little bit. I think the cinematography all through this is really incredible. Like there's a couple shots in this where it looked like 50s Technicolor, and I didn't watch it in 4K or anything. I mean, I watched it on HBO Max, and it looked fine. But I'm sure if I saw this in 4K, it would be even more. It would, I'm sure there's a better. I'm sure I'm only seeing a fraction of how beautiful this movie actually is. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I only saw it through the lens of HBO Max too.
Yeah. But
I do wonder what.
Yeah, but there was a shot where it's Joan Chen and John Lone, and they just look like, and I think intentionally, like they're in a 50s movie. Like just this really lush Technicolor and I thought that was really effective. And I thought, in general, I don't think there's a single uninteresting image in this movie, which is a little bit my problem with it, is that I feel like that's the humanity is not coming through. And I think go ahead.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. It's so composed and it's so clean.
And you mentioned Lord of the Rings, and I had that similar issue. I mean, these movies couldn't be more different. Lord of the Rings is, of course, fantasy. But I said, when we did the Lord of the Rings episode, I had seen the first one 20 years ago, but I watched 1, 2, and 3 because I wanted to just, obviously give it its due. I know it's a third of one movie. And I was very effusive in that episode of saying it wasn't so much that I didn't like it, it's just that I couldn't engage with it. But technically, it was beautifully done. It was definitely... I didn't have any issues with the technical mastery of that movie. Like you, I had never read those books. We don't have to relitigate Lord of the Rings, God knows. But I'm just saying, it's when I embarked on doing this podcast, The Last Emperor kind of represents what I fear will be the downside. Like some of the movies I'm going to have to see. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, but I do have to be honest in that it felt just the lack of humanity in this was surprising because, where are you on Bernardo Bertolucci? Have you seen any of his other movies or? Okay, that's fine.
No,
it's okay. I'm not like hardcore Bertolucci. What he's most famous I don't know if he's his other most famous or infamous movie is Last Tango in Paris with Marlon Brando. So that's a movie that has an unfortunately checkered legacy.
Yeah, that's all I know about it is the controversy about the.
But that movie, putting aside how he got it there, that movie is incredibly emotional. Even if you think the characters are awful, is completely emotional and raw and only about the characters. Like there's almost no plot in that movie. I mean, there's a very basic story where it's just, and shot by the same person. It's shot by Vittorio Storaro.
Huh. Even illuminating, it was like, oh yeah, that there is some emotional rawness to it. And there is none of that connection.
Yeah.
Where there's huge life moments that happen in this where he's ripped from his mother, he's ripped from his wet nurse, he's ripped from his wife was the saddest story to me.
Yeah.
But still at no point did I well up or connect in that way. And there disconnect.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And not just going with the Best Picture winners, just the Best Picture nominees. We'll get into what this was up against and what else was going on in 1987. But just this whole podcast, I'm watching what these movies were up against and other movies that I like. And it's just so interesting because it isn't like these things weren't going on in movies in 1987. We're going to talk about some things that it was up against. There's an incredible amount of emotion going on in movies in 1987. We'll get there when we get there. You might even have some things in mind. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting because when I wrote down Joan Chen in the hospital, that's rough. But it's like, oh, I'm sad, but I'm not engaged because I don't feel like they've done right by her as a character. She's a very good actor, but I feel like anything I'm feeling is what the actor's bringing to it. But you as an actor know there's a limit to what you can bring to something if it's not there on the page. I mean, you'd be the first one to say that, right?
Yeah, and it's also in juxtaposition with everything else that's going on. Like, how much have we vested in this character, and do we care about their wants? And I think the most that I connected with her, and I was engaged with her performance, that I had to go and I was like, did the last emperor's wife eat flowers? I was so
let's talk about, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, the flower eating scene, I actually did, that's a moment where I guess I like that moment, because that's a moment where I was like, what is happening? So can you let's walk through that moment. So is that where they're at that fancy party at the embassy?
Where he's parading as like, look, no, I'm the emperor of I'm the Manchurian emperor, right? Or so he's at the fancy party and she's neglected. So I read about it, that it's an artistic choice to show her neglect, that she basically lashes out and sits and eats this flower arrangement. And being a cat owner and very sensitive to like what flowers are poisonous to cats, I'm sitting there going, oh no, like this must be very dangerous. Well, I hope those aren't toxic flowers. But it was a riveting scene to show that she's
in a very beautiful visual. I think that's a moment. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's a moment where things link up in this movie in the right way. Where like we're feeling something emotional about a character, and it's also visually stunning because it's just a great visual. Yeah. I don't know my flowers. Maybe you were able to spot it, but it's just a great. But for people who haven't seen the movie, I mean, she's in this gorgeous gown. She's a stunning woman, and she's sitting by herself. And as Paige said, she's neglected because her husband's in a tux, and he's just, he's the belle of the ball. And I guess to lash out, like you said, she's just pulling these long white sort of petals off this. It's a centerpiece. It's a centerpiece of like a fancy ball, or at least a fancy party. And she's just shoving them in her mouth and eating them, and she just keeps doing it like they're potato chips. And
yes, it looks like performance art. It's gorgeously done, and it shows that she's just losing it. Yeah. And that's in her composed way of lashing out, is eating flowers, being self-destructive.
That's a moment I think I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that's a moment that really works in this movie. It's a small moment, but I think that's I don't want 3 hours of moments like that, but I feel like that connects us, or it's the closest I felt emotionally connected to any of these characters.
Yeah, but it's 2 hours in.
Yeah, it's very long into it. Yeah, it's late. Well, and you brought up a really good point also, because the opening of this movie is this little boy basically being ripped away from his mother, which is objectively a terrible thing, and it's almost a layup emotionally, and I just didn't connect to it, because this little boy, which is sort of the point of the movie, becomes this spoiled little shit as intended. But you don't get the sense of, because so many true stories, this is maybe a random example, but it's what popped in my head. Welcome to hindsighting. Remember the Charlie Chaplin movie that Robert Downey Jr. did? I don't know if you ever saw that. Okay. So a
long time ago.
Fine, but I'm saying is a huge part of that movie is his mother, played by Geraldine Chaplin, not oddly, but interestingly. Yeah, wow. Geraldine Chaplin played his mom, so she played her own grandmother. And so the beginning of that movie, she's institutionalized, and he's a little boy, and she comes up later in the movie, but that's such a big thing in his life, is like he's like, look, Mom, I'm rich and famous, and and I don't feel the specter of that hanging over this movie in the way that it should. And then in the end, and in the beginning of this movie, which is technically, it's decades later, you see how broken down and sad this guy is, and you are sympathetic to him, but it just doesn't. Yeah, the word I just keep going back to is something. There's just something very hollow about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Am I being too harsh? What do you think?
I don't think you're being too harsh. I think that it's the story is told and it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I just I wish I cared more.
Yeah.
But I do think that it shows the degree to which I am engaged. It made me go read more about him.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in real life, he was able to go out and see when his mother died of opium. The overdose. He apparently that was like the one time he was allowed to leave the city and go see her.
Yeah.
Or the body. Yeah. But I agree that it's fascinating, but devoid of ethos.
Yeah, I wasn't
pathos. Sorry,
pathos. Yeah, I wasn't bored. Like I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't engaged, but it wasn't like I thought. Like this is. I talked about previous episode we did 1986, and I watched a movie you may be a fan of. I watched A Room with a View in preparation for that. It's the first Merchant. So you're a fan?
So good. Yes,
see,
I am.
For me, I was bored with that movie. Now I do like other Merchant Ivory movies. I was just bored. I won't bash it. It wasn't like I was bored because it was poorly done. I just couldn't engage with any of it. And that movie's probably an hour shorter than this one. But this, yeah, I because there's so many interesting things going on because this is a world I don't know about. And if you were to read like a synopsis of it, like, oh yeah, this is really interesting. This is a good idea for a movie. I understand why Bertolucci saw this story. I don't know if it's based on a book or obviously it's historical.
It's based on his autobiography.
Right. I could see sort of a take on this movie that could be interesting. And there's flashes of that here. Like the nonlinear structure, I think, works. I don't think he's the first guy to do this, but that's why I made that comparison to Slumdog Millionaire. But again, that movie is a full hour shorter than this one. And people who listen to this show might think I'm very obsessive about length. I mean, I don't mind length. The length isn't necessarily the problem. It's just there's just something languid and hollow about this movie that was, I won't say it was disappointing, because I was kind of expecting that, but I'm disappointed that I wasn't surprised. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. There's something that's like, if you can tell the story within a reasonable time frame, right? That it shows that you know the story that needs to be told. And I feel like this was epic and a little bit sprawling. Like, what is the ultimate?
Right.
What is the ultimate story? And I think it did a really good job in the theme of what, like, power and perceived power.
Yeah.
And the imprisonment within your world, right?
Right.
Like, this person is his own king, but to no one.
Yeah.
To no.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because there are short movies that go on too long. I don't want to make this just about this being 2 hours and 43 minutes because it's much shorter than Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I just feel like the time is sort of misspent here in a lot of ways. Let me ask you this, and this may not be something you can answer, but this is something anecdotal. I feel like, maybe for the reasons that you and I are talking about, I feel like this movie does not have any kind of a reputation or pop cultural imprint. I'm not saying it's hated, because that would be one. I feel like this movie is its only legacy, and this is obviously not something I can like divine as true, is that like, oh yeah, that's that movie that I think won an Oscar or was like a big movie. I mean, do you disagree? Has anybody ever brought this movie up to you anecdotally the way that they would have like some other movies around this time, whether they won or not?
No, that's such an interesting observation, because even talking about it, I've been out a couple times this week, because I just watched it this week with my husband, and he had seen it only once,
right,
in the early 90s and hadn't seen it since and had no reason to go back to it. But there was, and when I would bring it up to a few people, I just watched The Last Emperor for the first time last night, and nobody had anything to engage with. It's like, oh, okay. Not that they, like, nobody was like, I love that movie, or I don't remember it, or they it just stops. The conversation stops.
Yeah, and I've had a similar thing because I mean, obviously, I'm watching a ton of these things, but people will say, "Okay, Ed, what is it this week?" and who's on, and so on and so forth, and it doesn't evoke, like, we did an episode first season about Crash, which is I'll just politely say, a reviled movie. We litigated whether that was warranted or not, but the reputation of Crash is not good. Something like Crash is something that people are still talking about 20 years on. I know this movie is almost 20 years older than that, but and look, there's 90, it's about to be 98 Best Picture winners. There's 97 at the time we're recording this because the Oscars are in about 2 weeks. So there are a lot of obscure titles in there. A ton of obscure titles. I'm not saying this is the most obscure of the 98 because I haven't seen them all yet, obviously. Maybe not obviously. But just anecdotally, like you just said, nobody has said, oh, I love that movie, oh, I hate that movie, or even said, oh, I've never seen that, but I want to because da-da-da-da. Like, it's something... There's something overly austere about this movie. As much as I'm praising its cinematography and its costumes and a lot of the things that it won Oscars for, there's an austerity to it, or even a sterility to it, that I think is what kills it. And it's surprising looking at just one other Bertolucci movie, Last Tango, which is the one I've seen, a few times, which looks great, same cinematographer, but which is so raw and so emotional. And I would have thought that an Italian director would want to tell this story to bring some passion to it. Maybe I'm generalizing, but I'm looking at his other work, though. It just seems strange, because as a Bertolucci movie, it just seems like a strange move. Obviously, it worked out for him, but...
I wonder if coming in from such a different culture, I mean, how much he had of a consultant or immersive experience he had in it, or somebody to really be honest with him, about the emotional landscape too.
Right.
But what I heard from even, because there were a lot of negotiations and getting the permission to film at the Forbidden City.
Right.
But ultimately, he said once the agreement was made that the Chinese government was easier to work with than a studio.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's really fun. I didn't know that. That's great. I want to talk about something, we're jumping around a bit, but I want to talk about something that I thought was really effective. And it's the very end of this movie, and I'm going to draw kind of a strange parallel, but just the very end of this movie. And I guess I'm being a little rough on it because I see flashes of, so for all the humanity and emotion that I feel like is missing from this movie, I do feel like the very end kind of gets there. Now, it doesn't get there to a point where I forgive it for the 2 hours and 40 minutes that come before it, but the very end where John Lone returns to the Forbidden City, which is now a museum, and there's the throne that he sat on is there, and it's filled with tourists, and he says to this little boy, or some kid, I don't remember if it's a boy, he said, he's sort of like telling him all about this, but doesn't say, oh, I used to, be this emperor. I found that really, really effective. Again, I don't think it redeems the whole movie, but I thought that was such a strong instinct to have him have him and us return to the Forbidden City, and then it's a museum, and he's finally free at this point. Like, he's out of the re-education camps, which are basically prisons, but they are there to be re-educated. I thought that was interesting, and so Adam, let's start there. What did you think of that? Did you?
I I liked him returning. I wasn't, I guess, emotionally available at that point to really be going, oh, that's great. Because I did, because the moment that I connected to when he was playing tennis and he was evicted from the city, and it's for the first time where he's always wanted to leave, but then when he's forced to at that time, he didn't. This is the devil I know, right? Versus the devil you don't. So that was the moment, but him coming back to it, it was, I guess I just felt like it was another pretty part of the movie.
Too little, too late for you. Yeah, again, I don't think it redeemed all what was missing for me for the previous 2 hours and 40 minutes, But I guess instinctively I felt like that was the right move. Maybe it was just, you know what it reminded me of, and I might cut this out, but just did you see the movie Zone of Interest from a couple years ago?
No, I started to.
Okay.
And then I stopped it.
So the reason I draw this parallel is that movie, takes place in Auschwitz, and then at the end of the movie we see just footage of Auschwitz, the museum, like present day. We just see people coming to clean the museum and people walking. It's like documentary footage. It's nothing to do with the story. It just jumps from, 1940, whatever it is, to 2023. And that's a much stronger movie than this, but I'm only comparing them because it's like we're seeing like this setting of the movie and that now it's a museum. And I thought there's something kind of interesting about like this story. I guess the instinct of showing the Forbidden City as this place that's literally forbidden, and then showing, it just becomes this. I mean, not just a museum. I mean, if I were ever in that part of the world, I would love to go there. I think it'd be very interesting to see, just beautiful, just to walk around it. If I were in if I were in that part of the world, but it just made me think about that. There was one line, I forgot who said it. Maybe you can help me out here. That again, they really just flirt with the movie that I guess you and I want it to be. But there was one line I wrote down that I thought was really well written, and it said, it's somebody speaking to the John Lone character toward the end, and he said, this person says, all your life you thought you were better than everyone else. Now you think you're the worst of them all. And I thought that was a good line, but I also think it's like, I didn't see that, depicted in the movie. Like the arc of this character is interesting, but I feel like John Lone is doing a lot of lifting. I feel like his charisma and his magnetism is sort of lifting and trying to fill in holes that I think are in this script. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Where is that? It's only in him viewing that footage of the Japanese bombing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the only moment but we don't really see him suffering or regretting or toiling with what he's exposed to, like what he let happen or facilitated happening. There, his brother's saying, you're no longer emperor, but there isn't a moment where it's showing that he willfully abdicates for the current government. So there are just things that's like, you're just telling me this happened.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I like the line. Yeah, I guess I like the line, but it does highlight what sounds like is both our problems with this movie.
I was really struck with his wife's role in it. And there was the moment where she gives birth and you see a moment where she's happy and there's this healthy baby and then they show a syringe and there are these, and then they tell him that the baby was born dead. Yeah. And so there are these fascinating moments like that struck me. Yeah. Where later to find out, they killed this child. Yeah. But that's it. And then we'll address it again until she comes back having lost her mind. Yeah.
And again, her losing her mind, she's a really good actor, and that imagery is really effective, but because I'm not connecting quite to their relationship, I guess my general thing to whip this horse totally dead is I'm not feeling the emotional weight of almost anything that's happening in this movie And I feel like, and I think that's a problem. And it's different from Lord of the Rings in that Lord of the Rings, it's like, okay, this is a me thing. Because obviously that's a very successful franchise, and I have friends who just love it. And so I tried really hard in that episode to kind of recuse myself. This, I don't feel, this is something I could have engaged with, because this isn't fantasy. This isn't necessarily the kind of movie that is my bag, but I do watch a lot of biopics, and I think any subject can be made user-friendly, can be made exhilarating if it's done the right way. I mean, I almost feel like if somebody had said, okay, I want to tell this story today, not a remake of The Last Emperor, but if somebody said, okay, I want to do this story now, but I want to focus on just this one thing, and I want to do it in 2 hours, and I want to, and maybe it needs, I'm not saying this movie doesn't work because the director is Italian or is just not, is foreign to this. I'm not at all saying that's what it is, because sometimes that perspective is what helps it. Sometimes somebody from another country observing your country could be really interesting. But yeah, I mean.
But I felt, because there was such a disconnect, that it never connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
One more thing I'll say, just looking at it from a modern lens and coming back, my initial thought going, if this were made today, like 1987, this movie, I would hope that it were not spoken in English. And there's just a completely gratuitous blackface scene. Oh yeah,
I wrote that down. Well, I think that was period appropriate. I'm not saying it needs to stay in the movie. I think because it's because it's the 20s or 30s, I think that actually might have been the movie trying to make a comment about. So I agree. I'm making this movie today. I don't need to put it in, but I think in 1987 that wasn't okay either. So I think that that was, I don't know what the comment is, but I think that was just to show that.
Show the times.
Show the time and just show the decadence of these rich assholes that he's now partying with, just to show how insensitive they are. I mean, I'm not fighting for it, but I think it was intentional. I think it was their way of saying, look how disconnected this guy is from suffering, from racial insensitivity. I mean, it's ham-fisted, but, and again, I'm not advocating that it be in the movie.
Sure. It's one of those things that, like, it's, of course it'll like stick out to me, but it's like one of those things that's just it's passed over so quickly.
Yeah.
That it's just like, and we'll throw this in and move on.
Yeah. It's indicative of how the movie won't really stick with something, like this Japanese pilot character who kind of flits in and out of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, spend more time on it or don't do it. I mean, she didn't work for you, but perhaps if they spent more time and explained who she was, she might have. We'll never know, and that's totally fine. But I think it's, the blackface thing is indicative of flirting with an interesting idea, or even not even flirting with, even just sort of like saying, oh, here's something, and then just being like, well, wait, can we? I mean, another thing like that, not to be salacious, is the wet nurse, which is the one thing I take it back. I went into this saying I knew nothing about this movie. Just a few years ago, my mother's no longer with us, but I remember my mother mentioning this movie anecdotally. So she's the only, because I know my mother went and saw this movie, and she mentioned anecdotally this wet nurse scene. And so I kind of knew about it going in. I mean, that's certainly impactful.
Yeah. I remember, because I said I'd seen a couple of scenes like growing up. I think I snuck them if they were on HBO or something. And I remember, like, that struck me. I remember there are a couple flashes of it that I remember seeing. There's the image of this basically toddler on a throne. Mm-hmm. That image, the wet nurse, and the blood in the sink. Yeah,
beautiful image. Really, that's a striking image. Yeah. But still, striking image. Somebody engaging in this, and yet it's without the emotional cost. Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to categorically deny. Before we get to Best Picture, let's see if The Last Emperor was worthy of the other 8 Oscars it won. So, and it's okay if you haven't seen all these. This is just a discussion. So for Best Director, Bernardo Bertolucci beats Adrian Lyne for Fatal Attraction, John Boorman for Hope and Glory, Norman Jewison for Moonstruck, and Lasse Hallström for My Life as a Dog. So of what are those that you've seen, that you remember, does Bertolucci keep his Oscar, or do you give it to one of these other 4 people?
Yeah, I for the scope of it and creating that, I mean, it seems like it's an epic picture, right? Mm-hmm. It's an epic motion picture. So he made that. I did enjoy Moonstruck. I mean, Fatal Attraction, I mean, talk about a cultural influence of a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets it. What do you think?
I think Adrian Lyne for Fatal Attraction. I think that isolating the direction, I think he does, a really incredible job just tonally with that movie, just with the tension of that movie. I think the iconography of that movie is really strong. I think, the performances in that movie are really strong. And so for me, talking just about Best Director, I would give it to Adrian Lyne, given these 5. So for Best Adapted Screenplay, it beats The Dead, Fatal Attraction, Full Metal Jacket, and My Life as a Dog. So same question of what you've seen and what you remember. Talking just about the screenplay now, the script. What do you give? Does Last Emperor keep its Oscar, or do you give it to one of these other 4 guys? I
will abstain. I am not informed enough to make a vote on this.
That's fine. I would give this to Full Metal Jacket. A great movie, great script. So yeah, that's moving on. I think we would actually agree on this one. It wins Best Cinematography. It beats Broadcast News, Empire of the Sun, Hope and Glory, and Matawan. So cinematography, what do you think?
Yeah. It's stunning.
Yes, I think cinematography, this is absolutely stunning. Vittorio Storaro was a master. And yeah, this is the strongest thing about this movie, in my opinion. Art direction.
I'm so confused. Broadcast News is nominated for cinematography?
Yeah, Michael Ballhaus. I mean, it's a good-looking movie. I kind of agree in that it's not as muscular as these other ones. The cinematographer is getting Michael Ballhaus, who shot. He shot a lot of stuff for Scorsese. He had already shot Color of Money and After Hours. He's about to shoot Goodfellas and Age of Innocence, and so. I agree. It's a good-looking movie, but I would not single it out for its cinematography compared to Empire of the Sun and this movie. Just going with the nominees. Yeah, I'm not that the cinematography has to be big and epic, but I agree. That's a bit of a. I mean, Broadcast News gets 7 nominations this year, so it could have just been kind of like. Let's nominate it for almost everything, but
that's why I was confused. It wasn't in the directing category.
It was not. Yeah, it was. James L. Brooks was snubbed. Well, we know every year there's a snub, and that was Broadcast News is nominated for everything pretty much except for director. All 3 of the actors, Best Picture. I would imagine the editor. Actually, we're going to get to that in a minute. I do see for the editor. So, but I agree with you. Broadcast News. I would. Again, it looks good. It serves the movie, but it's. I wouldn't have nominated it.
What did we watched last night? The Untouchables. And that was 87.
Yeah, incredible cinematography in that.
Yeah. I'm surprised that isn't included.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I could not be more on that page. Untouchables is going to come up in our next 2 categories, though. Art direction, It beats Empire of the Sun, Hope and Glory, Radio Days, and The Untouchables. So what do we think? Just talking about art direction.
Oh, well, I'd still go with, The Last Emperor, I think, would be the art direction.
Yeah, this is almost a throw a dart for me, and I think I say that every time we talk about art direction. I think this movie, Last Emperor looks amazing. It's hard to know. The Forbidden City is an actual location, so I don't know how much they built or dressed it. But even when they're outside it's the period detail in this is pretty perfect. But it's the same thing with Empire of the Sun, Radio Days, and The Untouchables. So. I agree. Let's let it keep it, but it's also throw a dart. It's the technical mastery in all these movies, except for Hope and Glory, which I haven't seen, and I'm going to get to why I haven't seen it in a few minutes. But yeah, so costume design, it beats The Dead, Empire of the Sun, Maurice, and The Untouchables. What say you?
The costume design in this is spectacular.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I think. I'll just echo what I just said with art direction. I think, I think this is, I'm fine with this winning costume design. I don't have a problem with it. I think Empire of the Sun, The Untouchables are also strong, but I might even just give it to this because there's so many costumes and there's
so many eras, so many genres.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even gonna equivocate. I think this deserves costume design, much like it deserves cinematography. Best editing, it beats Broadcast News, Empire of the Sun, Fatal Attraction, and RoboCop. What say you? RoboCop, yes.
Well, I guess they had so much to edit. It was so long.
So you giving it to
I'll give it to them, yeah.
I'm a hard no on this. I think this movie was I thought this movie was really dull, and I think it needed. I mean, I don't know. I'll be a little fair. I don't know if it's editorial or screenwriting. Like maybe it's but I do think I do think the editing in this movie is overly languid. Of these, I've seen all of these other ones. I'd give it to Fatal Attraction. Again, for the reasons I would give it to Adrian Lyne. I think it's just taut and it's really intense and it keeps a mood. But I would also say if you wanted to give it to Empire of the Sun or RoboCop, I wouldn't put up a struggle. But I think if we're going to talk about like tension and keeping a pace, all of these things that are nominated, I'd say Fatal Attraction, I would give editing. And I feel like today Fatal Attraction could actually win editing. Even with all these other things going on.
I'll have to see it again. It's been a while since I've seen that one.
3 more to go, but 2 more to go. So best sound, it beats Empire of the Sun, Lethal Weapon, RoboCop, and The Witches of Eastwick. So best sound, what do you think? Or do you not really care?
I'll abstain.
That's okay. Sound is another one of these things where, it's kind of throw a dart. I thought this thing sounded fine. I don't really have, unless there's something like last episode we talked, one of the movies was Aliens, where it was like sounds I'd never heard before, like, new gunfire and things like that. This is kind of throw a dart. I don't care. It gets to keep it. Our last one before we get to the big one is this movie wins best score. It beats Cry Freedom, Empire of the Sun, The Untouchables, and The Witches of Eastwick.
Not having seen the other movies mostly in a long time, then I don't know. There's nothing really memorable about it for me. But even last night watching The Untouchables, that score is
so good.
Really evocative.
So evocative. Yeah. For me, The Untouchables is the way I'd go to. It's one of Ennio Morricone's best scores, and you can hum the theme, which is a thing I do think the score in this movie is very pretty, like the opening credits. I do think it's very beautiful. I just don't remember it throughout the whole movie. So I would.
The opening is so interesting, and it being, it sounds reminiscent of a Western, despite it being
an Eastern.
But despite it being Eastern instruments and that too, but there's something about it. It reminds me of an old opening to an old Western movie.
That's interesting. I'd go The Untouchables like you. I think it's a great score, and worth pointing out, not for the first time, 2 of these nominees, Empire of the Sun and Witches of Eastwick, both John Williams. This is not the first time that John Williams is nominated against himself. He's also nominated against himself. He wins for Star Wars. He's also nominated for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm not sure this is the last time it happens either. John Williams has something like 55 Oscar nominations. I think he has the most of any human being, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, but he definitely has 54, 55. That number could be old.
I wonder that if he ever disagrees with one that he won, if he ever disagrees with the actual win, and he's like, you know what, I should have won for Close Encounters, not Star Wars, and he just relabels it.
That would be interesting. He could relabel it. That'd be interesting. So, Paige, should the city stay forbidden? It's time to test our hindsight with the verdict against Broadcast News, Fatal Attraction, Hope and Glory, and Moonstruck. Was The Last Emperor the best movie nominated this year? So just against these 4 movies.
Just against those other nominations, because I was so surprised that Untouchables wasn't nominated. It's so hard for me to understand the vote on this, because if it's something that I would want to watch again tonight, if there's a movie that I would want to watch tonight, it would be broadcast news.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's your choice, broadcast news?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say one, I'm going to give you my choice in a second, but I want to point something out. So I've seen all these movies nominated except for Hope and Glory, and I want to talk about why, because this is a little bit of a rant, and I think this is not the last time I'm going to be talking about this on this podcast. So Hope and Glory is nominated for 6 Oscars, and so it's a major, it doesn't win any. Hope and Glory is not streaming anywhere. Hope and Glory is not available for rent on Apple or Amazon or any platform. Hope and Glory there is a Blu-ray of it that is so out of print, it's like $200. I have not seen the movie, so what I'm about to say is not a comment on the movie, but I think the fact that it is unavailable is a very scary comment. So why is a movie that is a Best Picture nominee when there's only 5 slots, that's only 40 years old, not quite,
wow,
completely unavailable to someone interested in watching it?
Why? Do you know why?
Well, I don't know why. I don't think it's specific to this movie. I mean, it's less so why questions. I think this is really, really concerning because I know as I get into decades like the 30s and 40s, I'm not going to be able to watch some of those Best Picture nominees. Now, all the Best Picture winners are available. You could stream them, you could download them, you can buy the physical media, but I think it's kind of very disturbing that a Best Picture nominee from only the 80s has been sort of wiped away. That's not to say that this couldn't come back into print. Like some company like Criterion could bring it back. I just find that very, very concerning. And it's not just about this movie, but this is the first movie in the 80s that I've encountered this with.
Really? That's so interesting.
And the fact that this movie was...
I didn't know if it was like, because I don't know anything about it, right?
All I know about it, all I know about it is that it's John Boorman, people don't know, directed Deliverance and Point Blank and Excalibur, and really good director. And all I know about it is that it's sort of like about his experience in World War II. He was a little boy in World War II. It actually sounds a lot like Empire of the Sun. Except it's his experience. So it's sort of like a Roma or a Fabelmans or a Belfast or any of these movies where a director makes a movie essentially about himself, or even Platoon, which we talked about last week, which is about Oliver Stone being in Vietnam. So it's just crazy to me. There's all kinds of movies that go out of print that are more famous than this one. I just think if you're a Best Picture nominee, even if the movie's not good, which it might not be, I just find it very difficult to swallow why this movie's completely unavailable. I mean, I don't really have an answer to it, but it's something I think I'm gonna, it's not that old. It's from the 80s. It's not like it's from, if it were from 1937, I'd be like, okay, I'd understand it. I just think that's a disturbing thing. That's all.
Yeah. We need to find it, make a mission.
Something that's kind of sad about this movie being singled out as one of the best of the year, and now it's basically gone.
Is it kind of censorship with it, or? I
don't think it has anything to do with the content of the movie. I think it just, I don't know why things go out of print. It could be a rights issue. I don't know how it was financed. It could be sometimes, and this isn't the case with Hope and Glory. Sure. Like I'll take a really random example. Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. The reason why that movie isn't streaming is because they don't have the rights to the music that they used, like the music that he plays. So that's a big mess. You can get a Blu-ray of it, but Pump Up the Volume, my understanding, won't be on streaming because of just the mess of the music rights of the music that they used in the movie. That's at least an explanation. Pump Up the Volume is obviously not a Best Picture nominee, but it's a movie generationally that so that's at least there's at least a reason for that, like a legal reason. So of these 4 movies, I'm going to go with Fatal Attraction. It was a really close call because I love broadcast news also, but I'm going to go with Fatal Attraction just of these 4. I just think that Fatal Attraction is iconic. And I think that this was, you may remember, this was a huge cultural moment in, this was a thriller, kind of a Hitchcockian thriller, which some people could even dismiss as like a trashy thriller, but this had a real cultural impact. And I think I don't know how many other thrillers could claim that, you know, and I think that's what's very cool as somebody who focuses a lot on that genre. And I think
I didn't see it until I was in my 30s, but
sure.
I knew so much about it.
I was much older. I don't know how old I was when I saw it, but yeah, I mean, this started so many conversations. Obviously, it's an extreme situation where you have this woman who's obviously mentally disturbed and she's inflicting harm on this guy's family. But it started a huge cultural conversation just between men and women about like, hey, you can't just blow a woman off. You can't just not call a woman. I mean, that's you know, obviously this also brings in infidelity and all these other things, but a real conversation was started. And I think the fact that we only had 5 Best Picture slots here and that this movie was included, and this movie is the biggest hit of these 5 movies, but for all the complaining I do about how snobby the Oscars are, this is not a snobby movie. This is not a movie that anybody thought, I can imagine, like, oh, this movie's going to get nominated for, you know, for a bunch of Oscars. So, you know, do you know, by the way, about the old ending, the Fatal Attraction?
No.
So you remember how Fatal Attraction ends, though, right? The current.
No.
Okay, well, I'll be brief. So in Fatal Attraction, the Glenn Close character, you know, basically sneaks into the house and attacks the Anne Archer character, and there's a big struggle, and Michael Douglas sort of pushes her down into the water of this bathtub that's running, and he thinks he drowns her, and then she pops up like a monster, and Anne Archer shoots her in the heart, kills her. That was a reshoot. The way the movie ends, you can see this on YouTube, and it's really interesting. The way the movie ends, the movie's exactly the same up until this point. So in both versions of the movie, they did a test screen, and Michael Douglas goes after Glenn Close kidnaps the daughter. There's that very famous scene where she kidnaps the daughter from school. The daughter doesn't know she's being kidnapped, takes her to like the roller coaster, and then Archer gets in a car accident just in her distress for trying to find her. Michael Douglas goes to, in both versions of the movie, goes to Glenn Close's apartment, basically tries to kill her, stops himself. She attacks him with a knife. He fends her off, and then he just leaves. In the old version, the next day, the cops come and see him and said, oh, Glenn Close killed herself. And Glenn Close is dead, and your fingerprints are on the knife. We're arresting you for murder. And they literally cuff him and they take him away in front of his wife, and Anne Archer goes and, you know, she's like, he says, call a lawyer, come bail me out, you know, and she's looking for a number in his den, like in his Rolodex. He gives a name, like call Arthur so-and-so, I forget what he says. And she finds the tape that Glenn Close had said, that she gives him this audio tape in the movie, and it says, Dan, without you, I'll kill myself. And then she goes, thinking this would exonerate him, she like goes to she walks out of the house to free Michael Douglas. And that's how the movie ended. And the test audience hated it. And they wanted to see Glenn Close killed. Like they wanted to see a big confrontation. And they decided to reshoot the movie, and Glenn Close fought it tooth and nail. She thought that her character should kill herself, that it was set up in the movie, the whole Madame Butterfly. And you see the last shot of the movie, by the way, of the old ending, is you see Glenn Close cut her throat with this knife as Madame Butterfly. It's beautifully done. I mean, it's beautifully performed. And Glenn Close fought, and finally just had to go along with it. And obviously this movie was a big hit. And I kind of like the other ending better, but I don't know if the movie would have been a big hit. But it's interesting. I think it's a real fascinating what if, because they didn't. Yeah. Some test audience somewhere didn't like it, and they changed it, and the movie was a hit. And it's often cited as like, well, the audience didn't like it, and they got to choose their own ending. But it's interesting. It's a really interesting sliding doors of what could this movie had the same impact if they went with this much more adult ending. Because when Adrian Lyne makes Unfaithful 15 years later, he sticks with a more adult ending to that movie. They did shoot another version of the ending of that movie, but he, maybe because of the power of having made Fatal Attraction, he's able to deliver a much more ambiguous and adult ending to that movie. So I don't know. You should just check it out. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating that Glenn Close shot this movie. She acting the whole story thinking of where the trajectory is going. And so she believes that to be part of her character would be suicidal.
Yeah, it's totally set up in the whole, even the movie we have now, it's completely set up that this woman, that is a possibility for this character.
And that's how she plays it. And so then to take that away from her undermines what she believed she was playing for the performance. I mean, it doesn't undermine her whole performance, but it's like what her intention was with it. So that's so fascinating. I can understand why she would fight it. And
this is a movie, that makes her really famous. And we should talk about it. It doesn't come up like on our beat, but I want to talk about, especially since I'm talking to a very good female actor. This Best Actress race, I don't know what the fifth is, but here are just three performances. So Cher wins Best Actress. She beats Holly Hunter for Broadcast News and Glenn Close for Fatal Attraction. And Meryl Streep's in there for Ironweed, a movie I haven't seen, but it's Meryl Streep, so let's assume she's good. That is those are three incredible performances.
So good.
I would say
Holly Hunter is...
I would argue those are the best three performances from those actors. I would argue that Glenn Close is never better than she is in Fatal Attraction. She's great in a lot of stuff. And I would Holly Hunter is never better than she is in Broadcast News. It's the best character she's been given to play. And Cher, same deal. So just what a rich Best Actress category. And it's only three.
Wow. Yeah. What a... some iconic performances.
Yeah. So I mean, that really was a rich choice. So now it's time for the appeal. Paige, what is the best movie of 1987 for you, period, whether it was nominated or not? Any movie that came out in 1987, what's your favorite? Or favorites?
There you go. It's okay. Favorites. I did enjoy The Untouchables. And I watched it again last night because I am an unabashed Kevin Costner fan, because when I was 11 years old, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves came out, and that was just such an influential movie in my life.
Sorry, what came out?
But Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh, right.
Yeah, when that came out, I was like, I was a forever Kevin Costner fan. It's a terrible movie, and he's a terrible actor in it. So I watched so many Kevin Costner movies growing up, and he's good in The Untouchables, and it's a good movie, but it wasn't great. It's a great movie. It was enjoyable, but when I watched it again last night, it didn't hit home the way that it had before. For me, I really enjoyed Broadcast News, and Moonstruck is a very compelling movie. So I need to look at the list again of all the movies that came out that year, but because it's slipping my mind. What about you? What are your Fatal Attraction? I'm believing.
Well, no. It's not Fatal. Fatal Attraction is my best movie nominated that year, and I do think it's one of the best movies of the year. But you gave me an incredible segue, and I think I remembered your love for Kevin Costner. So my favorite movie of the year is actually the other movie that Kevin Costner made in 1987, and it's No Way Out.
Yes. Oh my gosh, No Way Out. It's so good.
So I'll start with Costner because you kind of took us there. I think that this is his best performance in a movie. This or JFK, very different performances. And it's not the kind of performance that would win an Oscar, but I think I compare it a lot to John Travolta in Blowout. And what I mean is it's like a Hitchcock leading man. There's something about Costner in this movie in No Way Out, because he shoots No Way Out before The Untouchables, but they flip in terms of how they come out. But those two movies make him a big movie star. And, he's sort of on the ascent. He's in Silverado and people sort of know who he is.
Silverado's an amazing performance.
Right, but that's before this, yeah. But right. I think what's interesting, what's great about No Way Out, which is sort of atypical of a lot of his movies, is that he's got a lot of intensity and a lot of energy in this movie. And I think that's very hard to do, because in No Way Out, the situation that he's in, he's basically in a really intense situation, kind of his own making, and that's very hard to pull off. And I think the Hitchcock part of it is obviously he's like very good looking, and he's sort of an ascending movie star, but still a familiar face. And I think that this is the kind of thing that we just don't see a lot. I also want to talk about Sean Young, who's the woman in this movie. I think that Sean Young was really done very dirty by Hollywood. And I think that in this movie, she really brings kind of like a daffy energy to this movie that makes her character seem like a real person. Like she does a lot of things that feel almost improvised. And I think that he has better chemistry.
Diane Keaton eccentricity.
Yeah, but it feels real. Totally. It feels like that's maybe who Sean Young was. And I feel like she brings something out of Kevin Costner as a female, sort of chemically speaking, that the only other woman that I could think of was Susan Sarandon in the very next movie, in Bull Durham. And I feel like this is sort of the best we've seen Sean Young, and she's got a very complicated, a lot of complicated things happen after this. I'm not going to litigate that now, but I think she really brings a lot of, like I said, daffy energy to this movie that kind of grounds it in reality. And again, I think his chemistry with her is so good, and I think that she deserves a lot of credit.
Have you ever seen the movie Cousins?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it. It is
so good. My husband recommended it to me, and I never really heard of it. But it's Ted Danson, Isabella Rossellini, and Sean Young, and a wonderful. It's one of those blend of genre. Like it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's romantic. It's a beautiful movie.
I'll have to check it out. It's about a year after this, so right around this time. It might have even been her next movie. Another performance I really want to shout out in the same movie is an actor people might not know named Will Patton, who's sort of the secondary villain in this, and he's really good. He might be kind of a familiar face, but this is another actor who this is the best role he ever got, and he still works. Like he still pops up and stuff, but he's an incredible villain in this. And I think the fact that I've named 3 actors before I've gotten to Gene Hackman shows you how strong this cast is. This is interesting because like this is in the middle of what I call paycheck Hackman. Remember when Michael Caine and Gene Hackman, is that joke in PCU, are in every movie, and a lot of them are really bad. I mean, this comes out a month after Superman 4, which is horrendous, but it's also the same summer as Jaws 4 with Michael Caine. So it's kind of weird that they both were in a part 4 of a dying franchise in the same summer, maybe even like the same month. I'd have to check that. But I do think, but I think Hackman in like the right roles in this time still was able to kind of, lock in. And I think he's able to do a lot with a little. And so even in Paycheck Hackman, there's sort of like the smoke clears and he does something cool. I mean, it's not that he's phoning it in. It's just that he's, not making necessarily smart choices all the time. I think within those choices, I think this was, they probably paid him a lot of money, but I think this is a great movie. And I think he adds a lot of gravitas to it because he's probably going into the movie. He's the most famous person in it. And I think he brings a lot of what you want from Gene Hackman to this. Last thing I want to talk about is just the director, Roger Donaldson, who Costner works with again on the movie 13 Days, which is pretty good. But Roger Donaldson, he's an Australian director, and he's the kind of journeyman that we kind of just don't see anymore. I think to our detriment. We don't have these directors anymore who can work in a lot of different genres and do well in all of them. We have either huge auteurs, which I like, or just shitball directors who just don't care what they're making. I know it's a little bit extreme, but this is the kind of movie we wouldn't see theatrically now. This is the kind of movie would just be on a streamer and it would be at only 70% strength. Like they wouldn't put out an adult thriller like Fatal Attraction also, but same deal. Again, it's an adult thriller for adults. So yeah, no way out. I think it's it's a real close call, but this is an incredible year, and I'll talk about some other things in a minute, but this is by a nose the best movie of 1987 for me.
It's a great movie. It's coming back to it every time I've seen it, and I've seen it a few times, that it's always a thrilling watch, and that limo scene, come on. It's
yeah. I mean, when Sean Young and Kevin Costner meet, they have a sex scene in the back of a limo, which was really well noted. I mean, for all the sex scenes in Fatal Attraction, like that are very steamy, this is like a month earlier, and yeah, it has a very hot sex scene in the back of a limo that might be the most famous thing about this movie. So our last category is spotlight. This is where we can spotlight something from any movie. It could be a performance, cinematography, score, stunt sequence, anything, any aspect of a movie that popped for us this year. So, Paige, thinking about 1987, what do you want to spotlight? Is it a performance? Is it a stunt sequence? Like what pops into your head?
I mean, we just talked about the limo scene of No Way Out, so I think that's enough.
Okay, that's a good one. I love it. And your boyfriend, Kevin Costner. So that's your answer? You're going with that? I think it's a great answer.
I'm sticking with it.
That might be the most fun spotlight we've ever gotten. So kudos. I'm glad I teed that up for you. That's great. I love it. So I've got two. I'll start with a sequence from a movie from 1987. So I'm going to start with the pre-credits or cold open of the James Bond movie, The Living Daylights. You know this one, Paige?
No.
Okay, well.
I'll YouTube it.
Yes, you should. So as we wait, at the time we're recording this, we're waiting for the next actor to play James Bond to be announced. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking a lot about how the previous 6 men were all introduced. And I'm not going to run down all 6 of them. The most famous one is Sean Connery because it's the first one. You know, he's sitting at the table. We're on his back. It cuts to him. He's got the cigarette in his mouth and the tuxedo. He says, Bond, James Bond. It's the coolest fucking thing in the world. They're never going to beat that. But you can only hope to get the silver medal. You can only hope if you're the guy getting the job that you're going to get the silver medal. That's all you could even hope for. And for me, that silver medal goes to Timothy Dalton, who's introduced in the opening few minutes of The Living Daylights, his first James Bond movie. This whole sequence is about 8 minutes, and the entire sequence is really just a masterpiece of not just stunt work, but like suspense, like honest to God espionage suspense. The thing about stunt work, it isn't just that it was done practically. Like that's part of it. Like, you know, that it wasn't CGI, that it was like these crazy fucking British stuntmen like jumping off stuff and doing it. It's how inventive the stunt is. Like just me describing, if I were just to describe what happens, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's just the like, almost like how these stunts are conceived is why I think the 2 Dalton movies, because he only did 2, have the best stunt work of the entire franchise. Just what they come up with to do, because that's very hard. It's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to have real stuntman do this, and that's great, but it's also like what's actually exciting, what's like intellectually exciting, like what's something if I describe it, it's like, you know, like Tom Cruise hanging off the world's tallest building. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And like the fact that he has to get to this window, that's very, very hard to come up with. And I think that the Living Daylights and License to Kill, which is the one that comes right after it, just the stunt work alone is the best of the whole franchise and some of the best I've ever seen. But just going with the pre-credit sequence, because every Bond movie before the opening credits has a pre-credit sequence, The Living Daylights is the best of all 25. It's just a fucking masterpiece.
All right, I'm putting that in my notes.
Yeah.
I'll watch that.
Yeah, you probably find the whole thing on YouTube. And the whole movie is great. I'm not at all saying that some Bond movies, the pre-credits is the best thing about it. But just in terms of spotlighting, I couldn't talk about 1987 without talking about just the best opening of it. But I recommend the whole movie too. I want to be clear. The next thing I want to talk about, and we've actually touched on one of the movies in a way. So I've never actually spotlighted a writer before, but David Mamet has a legendary 1987. And first he wrote the script for The Untouchables, which Paige has mentioned. And I think The Untouchables has some of the most quotable dialogue of his career. Like, I won't do it, but he pulls a knife, you pull a gun. You know, that's that's something that's still...
Yeah, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah, all that. Yeah. But there's a lot of lines in The Untouchables, most of them uttered by Sean Connery or maybe Robert De Niro, that are just so great and should be more quotable. I'm really glad that you mentioned that movie. So The Untouchables is one, and that's like a big studio movie. Like that's he's sort of a hired gun on that. And you see sometimes these really great writers, and they're like one of 8 names on some like stupid movie, and you're like, oh God, why? And it's not their fault. I mean, it's never really the writer's fault unless he or she's also like the producer and the director. So the first one's The Untouchables, which Paige and I have talked a little bit about. But also the same year, he wrote and directed House of Games. You know this movie?
No.
Okay. Well, House of Games has one famous line that's not as famous as Knife to a Gunfight, but this might be the best movie script he's ever written, and it's one of the best movies about con artists ever made. And I know for a lot of people, David Mamet has this really strong flavor. I mean, you act on stage a lot. There are a lot of people who, like Aaron Sorkin, it's like they recognize it, but it's like, ooh,
it's a
distinct voice, and it could be a very strong flavor. And I think House of Games could be a stronger flavor than something like The Untouchables, which is a big budget, sort of an easier, maybe would go down smoother. But House of Games is a really fascinating movie with Joe Mantegna, who he worked with on stage. He was the original Ricky Roma. And when they made the deal for the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, it was Al Pacino, and he went backstage before a performance and said, okay, we made the deal for the movie. Al Pacino's playing Ricky Roma, and Mantegna said, like, I get it. I'd hire Al Pacino too, but Mamet handed him 2 scripts, and one of them was House of Games, and the other was a movie called Things Change, which comes out the next year, which is also good. But House of Games is a movie he makes with Joe Mantegna and Lindsey Krause, who he was married to at the time. And I don't want to say too much about it because it's hard to describe, but it's also a con artist movie. So like anything I would say, there's a lot of spoilers just I think it's a really interesting movie you should check out. And I think it's the best movie that Mamet directed. He
directed it too.
It's his first movie as a director. So yeah, it was a couple years after Glengarry on stage, and I guess off the back of that. And he'd written, Untouchables hadn't come out yet, but he'd written The Verdict, which I think he's nominated for an Oscar for, and he'd written some movies. But it's a really fascinating movie. And if you like movies about con artists, this is one that's like kind of a lodestar for a lot of people. And I think it's really terrific.
All right, I'll check it out.
So Paige, where can people find you if they want to find you? You want to promote any socials? You got something coming up this summer?
I will be up at Santa Cruz Shakespeare this summer. My husband and I are playing in Macbeth together, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, it'll be. And
you're playing Lady Macbeth?
Lady Macbeth.
That's amazing. That's so fun.
He's an astonishing, well-established stage actor, and he does like TV and film as well. But I'm very excited to be able to do this with him. Definitely.
If you can see this lady on stage, definitely do that. I have done that. It's been a long time. And the productions have only gotten bigger since then. You can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd, both Edward Clow. You could find some short films I've done on Vimeo. Paige is actually in one. I'm not even sure she remembers that.
I don't. Really? Send it to me.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but it's very short. It's actually a trailer, so it's like 90 seconds. But you are in it, and you are great in it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you can see Paige in that. Also, if you have any questions, you can email me at hindsightingquestions@gmail.com, and if I get enough of those, I'll do like a mailbag episode. Paige, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you so much. It was such a great conversation. Thank you for
absolutely
asking me.
Absolutely, I'll have you back. Next episode, we return to not just 1, but 2 Nights in 81ers as Matthew Scott Weiner and I discuss Superman 2 and Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. Till then, looking forward to looking back.